This particular video is going to discuss rational equations, application problems. When we see an application problem, basically what we're seeing is a word problem. And I know that when we see words in math, we get all frustrated and, I don't know, start sweating or whatever. But really not that bad. We just got to practice, and hopefully you'll see that you'll have some success. So rational equation application problems basically have fractions, have variables, same thing as before when we talk about rational equations. But in this case, we're tying it to a real-world problem. So in this particular instance, it says working alone, Shanice can tar a roof in 13 hours. Amy can tar the same roof in 15 hours. If they worked together, how long would it take for them to do it? So Shanice is by herself, Amy is by herself, and then if I were to put them together and say, okay, go ahead and tar the same roof, both of them at the same time, how long would it take them? That's really our end goal. Really, what are we looking at? Okay, if I look here, it says Shanice can tar a roof in 13 hours. So that right there means one roof is going to get done in 13 hours. That's how long it takes Shanice. Okay, so one roof in 13 hours. But in this case, when we talk about rational equation application problems, we always want to talk about what we call a rate. Remember, rate is slope and stuff like that. So when we talk about the rate, it's actually saying we have 1 over 13 roof per hour. Okay, so that means for every hour that she's up there, she tars 1/13 of that roof. So 13 hours, then she's going to be able to tar one roof. Okay, so again, what that first sentence says. So now the second person is Amy. And what does she do? Well, she tars the same roof in 15 hours. So she's a little slower. Well, that's okay. So if I go back to the rate, it's actually one roof over 15 hours, right? So she tars 1/15 of the roof every hour. So that's what we're going to be using. We're going to be using these specific values. Now, what do we want our end result to be? Well, we want to know how long it takes them to both tar the roof at the same time. So it might be faster, might be slower. You would think with two people doing it, it would be faster. Well, we're going to find out just how fast it is, or slower, depending upon, the problem. Okay, so if I look at this, what am I actually doing? It says working together. So if I have Shanice, and then I'm working together with Amy, I'm going to add Amy in. Well, what is Shanice? We know Shanice is 1 over 13. Well, plus Amy is 1 over 15. Equals. Well, what does that actually look like? So that's the 1 is on top of our fraction because that's for the roof. Okay? So we want, again, one roof to be solved. We want to, figure out how long it takes to do one roof. And then our denominator is our variable x, or a, or b, or h. Because I want to find out how long it is for them to do one roof and how many hours it takes. 1 over x roof per hour, we got to find out what our value of x is. So I'm going to delete the roof over hour real quick so I can solve an equation. This equation is a rational equation because it's got variables in the denominator, also it's got fractions. Your calculators will actually be able to calculate this, but if you don't want to, if you want to do it, long way, I'm going to show that, and then you can use your calculator to kind of justify your answer. Common denominator for 15 and 13 is 195, just like we talked about common denominators in recent weeks. So then my numerator here is going to be the 15, and this is going to be 13. Again, I have the plus in front, or in the middle of them, and then equals 1 over x. So remember, when I add common denominators, which is 195, I add the numerators, so I get 28 over common denominator stays the same. Okay, well, I want to solve for x. How do we do that? Well, here's how you do that. What's going to happen is because x is in my denominator, if we remember what this is actually called, this is called a proportion. So with this proportion, because x is in my denominator, I can actually flip my proportion to get my x in my numerator. So since I flipped it now, this x is now in my numerator. What does that x represent? That represents hours, and this 1 represents the roof. So one roof. We want to find out how many hours it takes to do one roof. So that's what my answer is going to be in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fraction, 195 over 28, and I'm going to put it into my calculator. So let's do that. So 195 divided by 28 is that string of numbers, 6.9642857114. But if we look at our question, it says round to the nearest hundredth. So hundredth is 6.96. So x is equal to 6.96 hours. So together, these two people, Shanice and Amy, take almost 7 hours to complete the roof working together. Kind of cuts their time in half a little bit. Okay, not quite in half, but pretty close. Okay, the way that I did that problem, I just showed you, was kind of the right way. That's the right mathematical way to do it. I'm going to show you kind of a different way here. It's a little bit of a, I don't know, shortcut if you want to call it that. But this is the way that I'm going to use and kind of show you some things here. So I'm going to use a specific generalized equation. Generalized equation basically stands for just something that always works when we talk about these work problems. Right? She's working together, and Amy and all that stuff. So generalized equation. So 1 over A plus 1 over B is equal to 1 over A plus B. This A is the individual person. Same thing with the B, it's individual. Okay, and then this A plus B is when they're working together. So right from here, here's how we do this. So I got 1 over 13, right, is Shanice, plus 1 over Amy, which is 15, equals 1 over X, because I don't know what they are working together. That's what I got to find. So again, we go through the same way. And your calculator, if you actually want to do this on your calculator, I'll show you kind of another way up here on the screen. So I want to take 1 divided by 13. I am going to add 1 divided by 15. And I get 0.143589717436. So that is equal to 1 over x, right? So it's really 0.1435897436 is equal to 1 over x. So if you use your calculator, this is what you would get for a decimal, but that's not my answer because it's not x equals that, it's 1 over x equals that. So here's kind of a way to do it, kind of a shortcut. Instead of having to do all the proportion and flipping and stuff like that, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take 1 and you're going to divide it by that number. Okay, so 1 divided by 0.43, 0.1435, all that stuff, hit enter, and guess what? I end up with my actual answer of 6.96. Remember, it's rounded. Hours. So 1 divided by that. Some of your calculators has a button that says like x to the negative 1 power. Well, that's the same thing. If you use this button, you'll actually get the same value. Let's go on to another problem. All right, let's look at this particular problem. Again, I'm going to use kind of the 1 over A, kind of the end way that I talked about last question. Remember, this was individual, individual, and then this was working together. Okay, so working alone, Alberto can tar a roof in 10 hours. Man, these people like tarring roofs. So 10 hours, 1 over A, so it'll be 1 over 10. We'll say the first equation would be the first person that appears. And then it says, one day his friend Deshaun helped him. Well, helped him usually is a keyword for working together. So that's 1 over, and how long did it take? It took 6 hours. So then how long would it take Deshaun to do it alone? Well, we don't know Deshaun, so I can leave that as B or X or A or whatever variable you want to use. It doesn't matter. But I want to solve for this. So I'm going to have to move that over. So I get 1 over B equals 1 over 6 minus 1 over 10. Now, let's use the calculator from before and kind of go through the steps there again. So in this case, instead of adding, I'm going to subtract. I take 1 divided by 6. Then I'm going to subtract 1 divided by 10. You can see I'm using parentheses for my fraction, the second fraction, 1/10. Some calculators will be okay, some won't. I'm just doing that so we don't have any discrepancies. And then enter, and I get 0.066666666666. It's all repeated. It shows a 7, but that just means that the 6 is the next digit. So remember, I get really 1 over b is equal to 0.666666 dot dot dots repeated. Well, the shortcut I told you was to take 1 divided by that. And I get 15. So we know b is equal to 15 hours. That is how long Deshaun takes to complete the roof by himself if he were to do it. All right, this particular problem, go ahead and do this one yourself and see what you guys end up with and hit play. Okay, we have two people, Julia and Arjun. Both of them can harvest the field in 6.16 hours. So we have 1 over something plus 1 over something equals 1 over 6.16, because that was working together. Had he done it alone, it would have taken Arjun 11 hours. So alone, it would have taken him 11. We do not know how long it would take in Julia. I'm just using J in this case for Julia. It could be B or A, it doesn't really matter. So again, I want to move the 1 over 11 over. So I get 1 over 6.16 minus 1 over 11. Now let's use our calculator to calculate our values. So I get 1 divided by 6.16, which is some decimal, right? Then I'm going to subtract 1 divided by 11 from it. Okay. And I get 0.0714285,714. And then remember, I'm going to take 1 and I'm going to divide it by my answer there. And you get 14. So for Julia, it would have taken her 14 hours to harvest that field. All right, go ahead and work on this particular problem and then hit play to find out if you got it right. So there we go. So Amy can do it in 9 hours. She can pick 40 bushels of apples. That 40, yes, is a numerical value, but it's not really telling you how long it's taking her. And then Mary can do it in 15. And we don't know how they can do it together. So now I have to use my calculator and find out what I get. So I get 1 divided by 9. And then I'm going to add, in this case, remember last couple I was subtracting, 1 divided by 15, and I get 0.1777 repeated, okay? Well, what do? I take 1, I'm dividing it by my answer. I'm not plugging in 0.177, I'm taking over my answer. All of your calculators have the answer button. It's probably a second, and then the negative symbol, or second, and then the enter button. You have to find out where it says answer and then use it, okay? And then I hit equals, and then it's 5.625. But nearest hundredth, 5.63 hours. So that is how long it takes them to do it together.